Hello everyone, this is Class 5 with VT Linden. So today is going to be our last high polygon session unless people want another high polygon session to happen. So this may or may not be the last one. No, that's a good point. And then we'll be transitioning into low polygon modeling, and then from there we'll be dealing with good ways to keep geo optimized, how to take high polygons structures and turn them down into low polygons so that we create a decent cage for them. And then we'll be moving on to UVing, creating a 0 to 1 texture space. During that time we'll also be talking about tiling textures, how to set those up. That's going to be separate from the gun itself, because the gun doesn't have any tiling textures in it. And then once we have our unique UV set all situated, we're going to talk about how to bake maps, particularly just the normals and the IDs. We'll go over different types of maps to bake, but and then of course we'll be moving on to texturing. So we've got a lot still to cover, and that's the reason I'm kind of transitioning off the high polygon itself. And you'll notice, at least from our last session, there's quite a bit more in here as it stands. And that's generally because I went ahead and did a little bit of the high polygon modeling myself in a time when I actually had some time, which was nice. But we can go over some of the stuff. If there's anything in particular that you see here that you may not necessarily know how to do, we've covered a lot of different aspects in modeling itself. And like I said at the end of last week's session, I kind of wanted you guys to push the idea of working on some of these pieces by yourself with the tools and such that we have learned through the course of the program. But you know, there's still some complex parts in here. I think we're gonna work on this bottom railing today. But other than that, I think there is one thing in here that I may not necessarily have taught you guys, and I'll actually go over that. And that's working with booleans, which you'll notice these little indentations are not necessarily modeled in like our other ones were. So like this, you know, it's actually modeled into the piece itself. And we talked about booleans. We talked about how I generally avoid them, but for some objects, it just is kind of unavoidable. And I'm going to talk about how I set this up for a boolean. Now this was the original piece, pretty simple leg of geometry. Modeling it shouldn't be too bad, even without me kind of throwing down the guidelines for it. And then I of course went in and added all my edge loops to the various parts and everything. And then what I did, so I'll actually save this file as a different one. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go back to my top down, drag this bad boy back up to its origin state, and then I'm gonna create a few cylinders. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in, make them about the size that they need to be. Select my objects again. Okay. So we've got a few cylinders. I'm hoping Maya cooperates with me, because sometimes booleans, they do not cooperate. But I'm just going to throw these around where they need to be. this guy out. Let's move these up. Let's make sure these are in the right spot. Make the top-down perspective. Let's go ahead and scale these up a decent amount. So the point of a Boolean is that you actually want it to cut into geometry itself, right? So for each of these pieces, we need to make sure that it hits the geometry properly. And I am hoping that it works as it should. So these are, let's see how deep these go. So this one needs to be pushed down a bit more into the geo. Push down a little further. Let's push this down a little further. Let's push them all down a little further. Now, there's different ways to do Boolean differences. One of the ways you could do it is actually in this low polygon state. I'm going to actually take this and I'm going to drag it away from my model. And I'm going to duplicate this a couple times to show you guys some different states. So, different ways that you can handle this is actually Booleaning in a low polygon state, which is your subdivided state. Now, the problem with this is, so let's see if it actually works. Because hey, it worked. Haha. Haha. I feel successful. When Boolean differences actually work for me, it's a miracle. They tend to never work. Let's do that. I'm just pressing G to redo that command as usual. No, I don't know. Difference. It's working. Alright. Okay. So now you'll see that we have some indentations. By the way, it does this material thing where it reverts to the other material, so I'm just going to go back in and assign my blue material into this situation. But here's the problem. When you subdivide it, you get this just lovely geometry explosion that just happens everywhere. Now, that's not the greatest thing in the world. As you can see, it's kind of ugly. So you have different ways to approach this. You could go in and actually connect all of these different edges so that you actually can start like going in and defining. But even in the inside geometry, you'll notice that its state is a little atrocious, so to speak. So if I were to go in and let's say connect these, get my split polygon tool. And of course, it's not going to connect my edges as properly as it should. Connect by vertexes since my split polygon tool is not working. Go ahead and grab this edge loop, even it out a little bit. I'm going to drag it close to this top up here. Go ahead and add another edge loop down at that bottom right there. I'm going to grab these faces, deselect the ones on the bottom that were selected. And then I'm going to go in and make actually select all of these faces. Duplicate them all inward, so we get that edge loop around the top as well. Now, that you'll notice it's a little better, but it still has some major geometry problems. And if I were to go in and, let's say, triangulate this, it's still making some pretty awful geometry, right? So the difference is, if you were to do this in a semi-smooth state and a fully smooth state. So this to say is, instead of working off of the low polygon undivided piece, we have our two substates. So this is if you press, let's say 2 as you're midway through smoothing, and this is your fully smoothed out version, which is using the smooth tool twice. So if I were to go in and just mesh a Boolean difference, this, and then do it with this, let's assign the material back to blue metal for both of them. Sometimes it might take a minute to calculate what's going on. Boolean differences are usually a little interesting in that regard. So now we essentially have our fully smoothed out state, which is divided twice with the Booleans in it, and as it stands, they're pretty clean. I wouldn't need to do anything else with this because this is already smoothed out. And then in the same regards to this one, it's not fully smoothed out, but it's for the majority, you know, it's still not a low polygon piece. So you've got a couple of little geometry issues. If you didn't want to go full smooth with it, these could always be painted out pretty easily. But for anything complex like this, and the reason I'm Boolean differencing this and not cutting it into the faces like I did with the other piece, and this is the main reason I would ever approach it like this, is when you see this piece, this is on a flat face, so it's relatively easy to cut into the geometry, move your faces around, and actually open up a hole to create an indentation. This, you're dealing with a curved face, which you could go in and manually cut the faces out. The problem that you kind of run into there is that it tends to mess up your curve sometimes. So this is kind of an easy approach to it. Of course, if I were to look in this at a subdivided state, it creates, again, wonky geometry, but we have no need for a divided state because the whole of the mesh is already divided. So that's the difference between modeling little details like that and creating Booleans for general purposes like that. So my suggestion to you is, if you do it, make sure your mesh is smoothed out beforehand. Otherwise, you just end up doing a lot of geometry cleanup, a lot of just kind of unnecessary work, considering that this is for a high polygon, something that's not being actively, like, it's not in game or anything, so you don't necessarily have to worry about its functionality. And then if there's ever actually any weird normal bends happening, it's always something that you could paint out pretty easily. I divided these with a regular 20-sided cylinder. I would recommend probably moving it up to maybe 30 if you can get it to work Let's see if it'll function. So if I were to boolean, let's shrink that down just a little bit. It's a subtle thing, but it comes out a bit smoother. So you notice that. Now, when you're creating circles like this or indentations, the one thing we pointed out with this is actually creating a curve and bevel around the edges, so that essentially when you're baking the object, undo that. I'm pulling these other pieces out. So what you want to do is you actually want to create a bevel around this particular edge, and that just helps the bake kind of notice that there's something happening there. So you'll see on my final mesh here, I went and actually created a second inset on the bottom of each area, so that when you look at it from above, you actually can start to see the curve in there. And then of course the other way to help that along, that emerges. No, I didn't have angle. Delete that. Oh, that's not gonna work. Let's do this. I'm gonna cheat. Don't judge me for cheating. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm actually just gonna grab these edge loops. I'm just going to shrink them in just a little bit like that. Now, it's not very noticeable, but when you bake this out, it'll catch that edge a little bit and you'll notice the indentation a little bit more. The best way to notice that is, okay, so if you're looking at this from a top-down perspective, you see the difference between this hole and this hole. You're getting a bit more noticeability from it, which will help your normal map out a little bit if you're not noticing that there's an indentation in that particular area. So that's booleans. Like I said, try and avoid them. If you can't and you need to use them, that's fine. Obviously, I ended up using them myself. I'm going to go over a couple of things in here. Some of this stuff actually looks far more complex than it actually is. I mean, we're talking a basic cylinder with a beveled edge here. These guys essentially were just cylindrical objects that I took. So let's say we have this cylinder. And I rotated it out. Now, because I knew off the bat I wasn't going to be able to add edge loops in to define corner pieces, because I knew it would affect my smoothness of the objects, I went ahead and started off again with a more complex cylinder. And then let's see, turn off lines. I snap this to the center pivot of my barrel if it actually wants to cooperate with me. It doesn't, of course not. So let's just snap it to the horizontal line. Let's just snap it to the vertical line. And then let's move it back. So this is essentially what I started out with. Man, I have to sneeze, but it won't, like... Oh, that was bothering me for like the past 3 minutes. It's driving me insane. Anyway, I apologize if I sneezed in your ear. I tried to move my mic away as quick as I could. So what I did here was go into the top-down perspective. So let's grab these three. Let's get out of skeleton X-ray. Grab these verts. So looks like it's about these. No, we've got these. Pull these up. I'm just going to do a quick dirty version of this because I'm not going to make it as particularly detailed as I need it to be. Okay, so I got that. Created that particular shape. Go in, select these interfaces here. I'm going to extrude them and scale them inward so we get a bevel going on right there. I'm going to extrude it again and create a polygon inset face. And I'm going to do that again so that we have a double inset on that side over there. You can delete those interfaces since they won't matter. Then I'm going to go in and just define out these edges really quick. This edge, you'll notice it creates a balance between that and that edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and even that out by scaling it on its axis and then just pushing it back. So I've got that edge loop there. And then these faces, these are the fun ones. Grab these guys. Grab this edge, and I'm just going to extrude that inward. And then what I did was move that up so we get a nice beveled edge going on there too. Scale these outward. I'm just going to fix up these verts here that kind of went off the ratio a little bit. Fix that vert, fix that vert. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab this edge again. And I'm just going to scale it inward like that. And then go in and just define my edges like I do everything else. So now, if I want to mimic that shape, I'm just going to pull all these verts in just a little bit. So we essentially got the shape that we no, not what I wanted. I'm trying to remember how I plopped out. I think yeah, okay. So I'll show you how I got that sharper edge on this front face here. Just trying to remember how I did it. Delete those random edges that it did. Okay, so this I wanted to remain flat, so I actually just went ahead and cut a specific line down this segment. and I worked off of that edge loop towards that that I inserted. Drag my magnet tolerance back down to 0. Just cut this line in. There we go. Sorry, that took me a minute. So that's essentially just what happened with those pieces, and that's pretty simple. Most of the rest of this body was a lot of basic cube modeling, and then adding accents and stuff to it. Most of which I mimicked using our process of dragging out a plane, kind of getting things into the spec of you know how they look on the reference model. So if I were, let's just kind of go over some of the process. So for like this piece, very simple geometry cutting, and what I kind of did for this was follow the shapes of my reference. So if I were to, let's grab a plane, we'll go over that really quickly so that you can kind of get an idea of what happened there. Let's push this up to about where we need it. Let's isolate that selection. I'm going to go ahead and mimic this field. So we've got a bevel going on there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this. Actually, I'll pull that edge down. And then I'll extrude it down so we have a bit more of a 3D object. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start playing around with, alright, so I need an edge there. The outer part of this is right there, the outer part of this is right there, inner part, okay. Do that same to this side, okay. And easy enough. So these are essentially just some guidelines for me, right? And they not all won't necessarily stay, but it's a weird process thing that I do. I just like having guidelines. So if I were to, it's a little off, so I'm gonna move inward. So yeah, I don't necessarily have one there, so I'm gonna shuffle you over just a little bit. I'm gonna connect these two in. They're a little off ratio, so I'm gonna even those out. Get rid of this line, so I don't need it. I get rid of that because I don't need it. Yeah, get rid of that, get rid of that. Not get rid of that. Let's move these verts in just a little bit. Move that vert in just a little bit. Move that in just a skosh. Move that out as well. Let's do the same thing over here. Let's add got some inside edge loops. Let's move down our tolerance a little bit so it stops snapping as much. Stop it. Okay, there we go. And then let's connect these 2 points. Connect these 2 points. Nope. Wait. So we've got our V's. Let's line these up just a little bit better with our point references. Move that point over. Move that point over. Shuffle this over just a little bit. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these inside bubbles. So there's one inside bubble. Go on over here. Let's do the same thing with that. This I need to move in over this way a little bit. And let's move that one over just a little bit too. All the while I'm deleting these edges and stuff because I'm maintaining my quad balance as much as I can. You'll notice there's a non-quad here. Let's get rid of that edge. And I'm just gonna split that so that becomes a quad itself. This edge will be hidden, so it doesn't really matter as much over here. Now let's go ahead and go in and let's turn off magnet tolerance. I guess I can snap it to that point since it's low enough. Going to cut. Actually, you know what? Let's do it from here. Just cut a line across. Let's cut this line up going here. And this is going to be our inner bevel. Get rid of those edges. So we've got our continuous edge flow, and we're good, good there, continuous edge flow. So when you're looking at it up here, you've got good edges as much as you can. So I'm going to go from here. And actually, another way you could do this if I wanted to get this flat, let's say I want to select this face and this face. Just actually go in Edit Meshes and Cut Faces tool. Now I can line it up with this. I'm holding down Shift and I'm just dragging a line, and you'll see this gray line appear, and you can actually rotate it around. So holding Shift will snap it every 45 degrees. So if you don't hold Shift, you can loose fit it wherever you want. So I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to create a horizontal line that's equal to that. So you'll notice now in the faces that I've selected, it's actually cut out a nice flat line for us. If I had no faces selected and I went to Edit and Cut Faces and just drag that line across, boom, it'll create an inverse line across the whole thing. But I just wanted it on those particular select faces. So now what I'm going to do is go in. Let's turn down magnet tolerance a little bit more. And create the last of my polygon lines here. Let's get rid of those. Let's get rid of that. slice this one up now. About right there. About right there. Get rid of that edge. Get rid of that edge. Get rid of that edge. Alright. So I've got quads maintained throughout. Oh, I've got a point here. I'll just delete that point. Okay, so we've mimicked all of the lines in there, and I'm going to go on a perspective here, and I'm going to select the faces. So I should go into X-ray, and I'm going to grab the faces that I want to pull up. So if I were to pull up all of these faces, which is my inner bevels, get out of X-ray, and now we're just to pull this up. So you'll see all those lines that we cut. Let's assign it our brown metal. All those lines that we cut basically created the shapes, and then we dragged all the faces up so that we created shapes out of it. And then, of course, I'm dealing with the high polygon modeling, you know, going in and defining all of our edge loops throughout the object. Now, again, we kept all of our quads and everything so that when we go to add all of these edge loops, we actually maintain good quads, and it's easy to just go in here and start defining all of our edge loops so that when we smooth it out, we're getting a good flow and everything, and it's keeping a nice consistent look to it. So I'm just going in, quickly adding them everywhere. You'll see that this process takes all of 2 minutes to do every time we have an object that has a nice edge flow. If it doesn't have a nice edge flow, this process can start to take forever. And actually adding in edge loops to every individual area, then you have to go in and start actually cutting them. So now, let me look at our. Did we get everything? I think we got everything. Look at it, and we've got a nice smooth surface, and that's pretty simple to do. It's essentially what we get out of it. So again, it's just a matter of going in and adding these piece by piece. So again, outside of this lesson, hopefully if you guys are really kind of following along as much as you can, that you're actually pushing to do some of this stuff outside of the individual lessons that are kind of happening here. So I'm going to go over some of the other smaller details in here. So stuff like this, the same principle as this inner ring that we did. We started off with a cylinder with more edge faces around the particular axis so that we could actually indent the faces and not have to add edge loops in, which will ruin the smoothing of that surface. And of course, when I was working on it, I'm defining the different materials on areas that I want to have different colors. So I've got a little bit of blue detail in here. This little individual piece, again, another one that I cut the faces into. Didn't do a boolean because I was dealing with flat faces, and that's really simple to do. We went over that process and how to create a small indentation. But for the most part, all this other stuff is really just straight polygon modeling, with hard surface shapes. So same with this. I went in and created, an extrusion on the inside of this particular face. Now, this is a curved area. So when you look at it, because I needed to define these edges, the edge loop went all the way across, and consequently, we get this edge line here, and that's something we're actually going to address when we get into the normal map itself, because this is easy to fix on a curved subject like this. So I'm not too worried about it right now. You know, some of the other stuff in here. So let's say I'm gonna go. There's a little hole that I missed. I'm gonna note that at some point. I'm gonna grab this handle. Assign it back to my transparent Lambert. I'm going to add an edge loop here. Let's see. I'm going to push back these points just a skosh. Move this edge just a little bit. Let's move these points back to about right here, just so they're not in the way. Actually, I'll flatten that whole area out. Shove these points back just a little bit further. About right there. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure these lines are flattened again, just scaling on that axis. Just to make sure that if something got moved, because you can kind of see the bend happening in them. And this is just a general cleanup step that I always make sure, especially when I'm dealing with a hard surface model like this, where nice edge flow and sharpness really kind of helps. Look at that. Let's see. So that whole thing. Should grab this by the face this time. Just shrink that down. So now I've got a nice even bar here. Let's go in and move these edges so that we get another outer edge. And you'll notice that I'm doing this on the two most outer points. You'll understand why here in a second, because you'll notice when I added that edge loop, it was in like the complete opposite direction. That's because it was averaging between that point and that point, which is more towards that outer way right there. Let me go in and just move these in just a little bit, so that when I go in and do the rest of these edges, it's mimicking those shapes that we just created between the 2 points. So I can go in and just easily divide it between all of those. So now we've got these particular shapes. We only had to actually shape out 2 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mirror this for this extrusion. Actually, I'm going to duplicate that just in case I mess up something. I'm going to go ahead and merge the verts. And then I'm going to grab all of these faces. Deselect the ones that I don't want. Now you can either extrude these, or you can add the polygons in themselves. See how they handle being extruded, because sometimes it doesn't necessarily want to work. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to add in the edge loops by hand. we've got, I'm matching these up to the inner bevel points of these. That's a little off, so I'm gonna move this over just a little bit. Move that over just a little bit. This one's a little off. I'm gonna move that over just a little bit. I mean, I'm being nitpicky about lining up my reference, but that's because I intend on printing out this gun, so I'm being nitpicky about it. Let's line up this a little more since that was a little off. Okay. So now we've got all of these lines in here. I'm going to go ahead and get out of that really quick. We've got some unnecessary faces in here. I'm going to leave them in for now, and we can actually worry about that when we get to our high polygon state. I'm going to go ahead and assign this to my brown metal. Or if it doesn't want to work, I'll assign it my Lambert, and then my brown metal. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and push down these faces. So we've got that inner cut, and then I'm going to go ahead and move in these faces. So we've got about that much space in, so I'm going to go ahead and move these in just a little bit. Let's move them over. So move them over just a little bit more. So now we've got a nice indent on those, right? I'm going to go ahead and delete my lower half. Keep working on all of the top half here. So that looks like it's lining up pretty well with our reference point. Right. Okay. This all looks good. Looks good. I'm going to go in and add my edge loops then, since that looks good to me. Let's go ahead and add an edge loop into the inner parts of this. I'm going to assign it back to my brown metal so I can get a good look at what's going on here. Okay, so those would get a nice sharp thing going on right there, which is good. Obviously this top part will resolve that. You know what, we can actually probably just, let's see. Well, okay, so that whole side of that face is hidden, so I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of yeah, I'm going to get rid of all these faces. I don't need any of them. They don't serve any purpose. I've got a non-edge loop going on here, so I'm going to fix that. I hate when I run into areas like this. They drive me crazy. Yeah, I'll have to figure that particular edge out at some point. But okay, so we've got one more area that we've dealt with as far as the detail goes. And obviously when we get more of the details that we need, we'll start defining out some of those edges a little bit more. Well, let's go back into one. I guess we'll just cover one last part really quick, since we're pretty much at the end of our hour. These do seem to go by incredibly quickly, which is really funny to me. Let's see. Let's cut in this one little indentation right here. Let's cut that face right to there. And I don't want to mess up this angle of this here, so what I'm doing is I'm just creating those two lines so that I can cut this particular area out. And I'll have to go in and fix that because there's a bad edge loop there. Let's go ahead and flatten these out. Snap it to this point. We'll snap all of those to that point. Again, we'll grab these verts here. And just get that lined up there. Get this lined up to that one right there, and I'm going to connect in these 2 points. And I'm going to delete that edge. And delete that edge. So now we've got continuous line flow there without disturbing this angle. So the reason I didn't move the points of those individual slices is because I didn't particularly want to mess up the angle of this going on here. You can always line it up by hand, but I prefer sometimes just to connect edges in like that so that I just don't disturb it. Go ahead and line this up. And so we've got that. We've got that nice shape going on. And then I'm just going to extrude it inward. Let's move our points to where they need to go. And move that back. And we'll snap that to that. Snap that to that. Go ahead and just move this face down. And I'm not going to add the horizontal edge loops, but I'll add in the inside edge loops to here for now. Yeah, that looks accurate. No, that looks like it's inward just a little bit more. If you move this, make sure you delete your edge loops so that it can rebalance itself out. Because if you move stuff with edge loops like that and you've got an angle, it can kind of bend the polygons a little bit. So it takes all of 2 seconds just to go back in there and add in the detail. Okay, So we're nearing the end of our hour session, and I want to just make my general points for today before the class ends itself. We all get ready for our meetings, as per usual, for every day of our lives. Now, if people want in the live class sessions, we can continue forward with the high polygon modeling, and we can go over the last few pieces left of this gun. I'm actually going to finish this in my spare time anyway, because this gun is going to be going off to the printer this week. It's coming out of a resin printer later this week. I'm actually pretty excited for it. But we can continue going over the high polygon modeling, finishing out all the rest of the details, or as per my plan, I'm going to start going into how to handle turning this into a low polygon item. Different approaches, just different things that we can do to get that whole shell happening. And then once we have the whole shell done, we can move forward with UVing. As one of my moles just pointed out, I'm printing out the gun for cosplay reasons. I'm not taking advantage of my time or anything. No, I actually I'm really excited to print this out. This is one of my favorite game characters as of late, so I'm pretty stoked. I actually just finished the mask as well. But so once we get the low polygon shell, we'll go over UVing and everything, and then we'll continue forward with that process. If we don't continue with the high polygon modeling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save out this high polygon model and send it to the people who are live with me, so that you can kind of follow along on how to convert some of this stuff to low polygon modeling. Granted, some of my practice in this in general, I didn't duplicate an object before I started adding edge loops. Typically I'll do that while I'm modeling, so that I actually save time in the low polygon stage. But for the sake of going through the class and stuff, I kind of neglected doing that this time around. But that's fine. It just means a little bit more time deleting edge loops that we spent so much time adding in edge loops. We'll get the low polygon, and then we'll move on to texturing, which is my favorite phase. Well, we have to do UVing first, which is my least favorite phase. No one likes UVing. Literally no one likes UVing, but we have to do it. It's part of life. And I'll show you guys some tips and tricks. Unfortunately, I think my UV editor doesn't work with Maya that you guys are using now, because I'm back in an old model of Maya in 2014. I think a lot of people are using 2016, and my HUD customizations and stuff don't actually carry over to 2016. But we'll go over the basics of UVing objects and working with a checker system pattern to make sure that our aspect ratio for everything is equal. Best practices for UVing, what to UV, what not to UV, what to mirror, stuff like that. We'll go over time, but I would expect next week that this high polygon model is going to be done, and we'll be transitioning on a low polygon modeling. With that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in a couple weeks.